I won't lower this down because Andrew will need to go up again. But Andrew, we work very closely with the ETU in Brisbane, with Peter Ong as the secretary, who's been just so supportive of any of the work of IPAN.
Yeah.
So Andrew's here, representing the ETU, and thank you, Andrew.
No problem. Thank you very much. I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I am today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I also acknowledge sovereignty was never ceded. I'm from the Turrbal and the Yagara people of Brisbane, and I pay my respects to them as well. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about the important role, can you hear me? Unions can play as we strive for an independent and peaceful Australia and world. To understand what we can do in the future, it's important to understand how we operate, what we have done in the past, and what we are doing at this very moment. As a trade union, our first priority has and always will be fighting for our members' wages, rights, and health and safety. We do this every day and we do it very well. There are some within our community and even within our own unions who say this is where our obligation should stop. We don't subscribe to that view. Our union and the vast majority of the broader union movement believe that we have an obligation to stand up and use our capacities to help make a better, fairer, more peaceful and just society now and into the future. We believe strongly that we have an obligation to use our voices to stand up on social issues that affect the broader community. But we don't do this one out or without our members' approval. We educate, agitate, and we organise around issues. We have a strong and proud history of taking issues on, such as standing up against racism, opposing asset sales, our opposition to uranium mining and nuclear power, including banning members from working in nuclear industry, standing up and fighting for the rights of refugees and asylum seekers, raising awareness around the plight of migrant workers and taking on issues of equal pay, pay equity and gender pay gap. We're also proud supporters of the Indigenous rights and support the Uluru Statement from the Heart, to name a few. But coming back to a couple of important principles, the educate, agitate, and it was really good to hear Janet talk about this as well. It's part of what we do. We educate, we agitate. Education is part of the key part of it. Principles to educate, agitate and organise principle and the importance of union democracy. I'll start with a case study about the educate, agitate and organise principle. The Not For Sale campaign. Who's heard of the Not For Sale campaign to save public assets in Queensland? I'll give you a bit of background in that. The scene is set. Long-term Labor government was defeated in a landslide, reduced to a maxi-taxi of 7 out of 89 seats. An LNP government was elected with a massive mandate that didn't include the sale of public electricity assets. The ALP was in disarray while the LNP set about preparing to do exactly what they said they would. You couldn't trust them. We didn't trust them. What we'd been doing as a union is we've been doing research about public opinion around public assets, what people knew about their electricity industry, what they felt about the workers who worked there. What we found was a mixture. People had respect for the workers, but they thought the electricity industry had already been privatised. So we needed to educate the public about what was at stake. You could have loved something if they didn't think we had it in the first place. So we started with some facts. Did you know our electricity industry is run in Queensland for the benefit of Queenslanders? Did you know the government that we own thousands of kilometres of wire, that we're the most diversified state? We had a range of fact sheets about what it meant, what our electricity industry was about. Employs thousands of Queenslanders in cities, towns and villages in every part of the state, provides apprenticeships for our young people, provides power for Indigenous people in remote communities. How it was run through the election of governments we choose, not by corporations owned overseas by somebody we don't know. Many of them were owned by grids, by China, Vietnam, Hong Kong, different places had an interest in our assets that our governments were happy to sell off. In contrast, in Victoria, the electricity industry was privatised, owned by foreign companies whose main aim was to make private profit. Its prices are higher, jobs have been slashed, and who can forget the Black Saturday bushfires caused by lack of maintenance from privately owned electricity providers. We were able to clearly show through facts that what would happen if Newman and the LNP sold off our electricity assets. There would be high prices, fewer jobs, safety concerns, and private profits would go to overseas multinationals. While there was much more to the campaign, these key fundamental facts remained a cornerstone of the extraordinary campaign. They were bite-sized facts that members felt they could explain easily. And that's a really important thing as we go forward, trying to find out of this fantastic report that we've got about the inquiry, what pieces of information, bite-sized pieces of information, can we give to our activists so that they feel comfortable going out there and discussing it in a public discourse. So that's some of the work that we need to do to make sure that that's out there. We also set up not for sale teams in communities throughout Queensland. Now, we armed them with simple fact sheets and talking points, and we educated the communities. When it became clear the LNP were going to sell assets and close depots, the agitate and organise parts of the plan were ramped up. We followed the Treasurer around everywhere. We turned up at rallies and markets, did roadsides, and we engaged with key groups, seniors and mayors, families, farmers and Indigenous communities to show how destructive this would be. We also set up some websites that ridiculed the government. We had some great stuff, some fun, some innovation. We brought out some information. This was an important aspect of what we needed to do, which was to educate, but do it in an interesting way. We also were armed with a report. That's why I'm coming back to the report that we've got here. We're armed with a report about the failure of privatisation in Victoria, which talks about the decimation of Latrobe Valley. Talked about the issues around suicides, house losses, people losing their homes, job losses, all of these things that were going to be part of this privatisation package. When it became clearer, support for workers supported them. So what we needed to do, we called on the community to support the workers who supported them through cyclones, floods and fires. And if they wanted to save their assets, they needed to bloody well fight for them. So we'd gone from a situation, by the time the 2015 election came around, we had gone from communities unaware that they even owned the assets to communities standing up and fighting to keep them, which was a big part of what we wanted to move through. The rest, as they say, is history. The first time Liberal government was booted out after 3 years, after having the biggest parliamentary majority in Queensland history. But what Peter Simpson, our late State Secretary, said, as well as saving our assets and jobs, the campaign also highlighted the role unions play in the community, as indicated by the following quote. Our collective goal has been to restore the vital role of unions in the community and to reclaim the good image of unions among local communities. So it was about, we are part of the community. Unions, 1.4 million, I think 1.6 million people in Australia belong to a trade union. And that goes into their families as well. When you talk to people, they are there. They're the people who are pumping gas. They are people who you go and talk to in the doctor's surgery. We are part of the community. So we have a role to play. And we do want to be part of that collaborate for peace. And I think it's really important as we go forward that we understand what's expected of us so that we can actually meet that and take that information out there in bite size so that our members, and we talked a lot about it today in our strategy group, which was really good, about how we take this report and use it and provide it as I hate to use ammunition, but provide it as information that people can take out and talk to not only their workmates, but their community members at the football club, at the bowls club, wherever they're going. It's information they know, and they know it off by heart. Another important part of the union campaign is union structures and democracy. On this one, but I think it is important, sorry. Union democracy, opposition to the nuclear cycle, uranium mining to the nuclear waste, nuclear power and nuclear weapons. Our position in regard to nuclear industry is unequivocal, no. And we do not organise or represent members industrially or legally in the work in those industries. But this didn't come about by us saying, oh, we're just going to ban it. In 1945 and the 1940s, when ETU servicemen were coming back from Hiroshima or Japan, they were devastated by what they saw, the human cost of nuclear weaponry. And they agitated through their subcommittees, through their sub-branches, through union democracy to have that put on the agenda. And eventually what that morphed into was the ban that was imposed on workers, on their own colleagues, saying, we do not want you going in and working in this toxic industry. So that's how union democracy works. And it goes through, it has discussion, we debate our nuclear ban every year. And we go back to our members and we educate them about what that means. And every year we get some pushback. Some people believe the rhetoric and the stuff out there, but we always get a recommitment to that ban. So that's a really important part of how we go forward. It's about taking it to our members. We need to take it to our members in a way that they can understand.